Hi, welcome to Local Matters. I'm your host, Ken Moore, and today we're going to take a tour de force of McMinnville, and we're going to do it with none other than our mayor, Mayor Rick Olson. Rick, thanks for being here today.
Good afternoon, Ken. How are you doing today?
I am great.
Yeah, it's a wonderful day to be in McMinnville, be a McMinnville citizen. Of course, anytime you're a McMinnville citizen, it's always wonderful. So,
well, as we've been just getting getting to know each other, I've noticed that there's a lot to talk about. So I've got this card here that I picked up at the
one of our goals and objectives cards.
This is a great card. I learned a lot, and I'd just like to go down and do some congratulating on top highlights of 2014. Have you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, that'd be just
Then
great.
we'll move over to goals and objectives. Okay. All right.
Sounds good to me.
Well, something that stood out here for me is the $7.8 million airport runway reconstruction.
Wow, that's a big one. You know, for years, McMinnville is classified as a general aviation airport. And through a general aviation airport, it's basically private airplane. We don't get a lot. Well, we've worked the last 5 years very hard in updating our airport to make it the best small general aviation airport there is. And we've been very fortunate. The FAA, along with us, have determined that McMinnville is a strategic small airport. So we've been fortunate with matching grants to get grants along the way to redo our airport. 2 years ago, we redid our north-south runway, totally dug it up, totally redid it, brand new runway. This year, we got the money from the federal government to actually totally dig up our existing instrument landing, which is the west-east runway, and totally redo that runway also. So that will make it much easier for pilots of both general aviation, single-engine aircraft, and small business jets.
Well, that's amazing investment in our infrastructure.
Yeah, and it's great because it's no tax to the citizens of McMinnville either. It's a capital improvement project that the citizens of McMinnville don't have to pay for.
Well, let's talk more about the goals and objectives it has around the airport. We'll talk more about the airport in a minute. The Ranger program.
The Ranger program is something that was started about 15 years ago, then stopped for a few years. What it does, it gives high school and college kids, specifically high school seniors and kids at Linfield or other colleges, an opportunity to act as a quasi-law enforcement officer and patrol our parks, patrol our downtown area. And this year, I believe we had about 20 of them that did that, and it really lowers the crime, lowers the graffiti, lowers the destruction, because we found with a lot of the kids and young adults that actually spend a lot of time downtown in our parks, they react much better to kids that are their same age than they do to police officers. But yet all of our park rangers have radios. They don't write citations, but they have radios. They can call the regular police if anything's needed. But that's really been a boon for us, and there's several other cities in the state that are looking at our program as a model.
Well, that takes a special young person to be able to walk up to their peers and say, how you doing?
It certainly does. But I think youth and young adults, they respect that when they're talking to somebody more their own age, even though they may not see things eye to eye. I think they respect that.
Well, I've noticed a change in downtown.
Yes, it's made a very positive change in downtown.
All right, another success. The city grants $117,000 to nonprofit agencies to promote tourism. That was the older program. Tell us how that worked.
Well, that went back to the time when the voters of McMinnville and the council, actually it was the council that decided to implement a transient lodging tax, which is basically a hotel-motel tax. We're one of the few cities in the state of Oregon that didn't have a motel tax. Matter of fact, people don't even realize if you go to San Francisco, you go to Portland, you go to Seattle, wherever you stay, you can look at your invoice or your bill and you'll see there's that tax on the bottom. Well, in McMinnville, you never saw that because we did not have a tax. So the city council decided that we were going to implement a transit lodging tax. But in order to do that, we went through about a 6-month educational process to learn about what transit lodging taxes are, how they could use, what the amount should be. We could have levied up to about a 10 to 12% tax, but yet our council decided that we were only going to levy about a 7.5% tax to start with and see how that goes. And so before we formed, and we'll talk a little bit maybe in a minute about our Visit McMinnville Destination Marketing Organization, but before they were formed, we had a committee that was appointed by the city council that out of this transit lodging tax, we gave them $117,000 to actually help with different nonprofits with other things that promote tourism and livability. One was the Bounty of the County got some money, Henderson House got some money, and so because we had that money there and we wanted to put it for good, useful use.
Well, let's go to that now on the goals and objectives to do with that lodging tax. It's now being administered in a different way. Is that
Yes,
right?
what it is as we got more educated, and I think I can't speak strongly enough that our council, we have a very, very good council. Council does all business by consensus, makes all decisions by consensus. And what our council has taken the attitude that if anything we're going to implement, we're going to be educated in what we implement. It's not going to be, well, let's do it and do it. So we went through training on destination marketing organizations, how to use tourism, what tourism is, how it works, how visitor centers work. And I have to be the first to admit, this weekend I went over to the League of Oregon Cities conference in Bend, and we visited Ben's Visit Bend Tourism Center. 2 years ago, what my feeling was towards what tourism advertisement promotion was about to what it is today has been totally changed. So our new organization is, it's a nonprofit organization, and what the city did is like so many other things, the city doesn't want to be involved in running, for transparency reasons, other reasons, running those kind of organizations. So we actually helped appointed a board of directors, temporary board of directors, and a subcommittee that got together and they formed this nonprofit organization. The city assisted with the paperwork, assisted doing the letters of incorporation, the bylaws and everything. And then the 1st of July of this year, we actually spun them off and signed all of it over to an organization now called Visit McMinnville, like Visit Bend. Unfortunately, because of what they call web domain jumping, we had to buy the name.
Ouch.
Visit McMinnville. We got a pretty good deal on it, but somebody in Seattle owned it, which was a speculation thing. Companies used to do that. So we bought the name Visit McMinnville. We spun off our own organization, hired a consultant who just happens to be his name is Doug LaPlaca. He's the executive director of Visit Bend. And Visit Bend is now known as one of the top destination marketing organizations, or DMOs, in the United States, to help form ours. And so as of the 1st of July, we have our own Visit McMinnville organization. They're looking for spaces right now. Last Monday, they hired a full-time executive director already. His name is Jeff Knapp. He was director of marketing for Sokol Blossard Vineyards. Has experience at the Avalon Hotel in Portland, has all the motel, hotel, lodging, restaurant experience. He's our new executive director. So his first thing on his plate now is to go out and they have to hire a marketing director and a support staff. So right away, we'll be gearing up that we will have, Visit McMinnville will have 3 employees right off the bat. And now we're hunting for space to house, permanent space to house our visitors center.
This is really going to change the face of McMinnville tourism.
It's going to change the face of McMinnville drastically because we finally have an organization whose number one concern, like McMinnville Economic Development, whose number one concern is economic development. We have an organization that their number one concern is tourism and bringing additional money through tourism into the economy of McMinnville.
Thanks to the room tax.
Yeah.
So those people that maybe were nervous about a room tax will probably see more benefits than they...
Actually, they will, and in turn, what it will do is I think it'll go a long way to actually helping bring additional hotels and lodging establishments into McMinnville, because we've never been able to really track demographics of what they call heads on pillows every night, what are, how many people we have staying. Well, through Visit McMinnville, we will be able to do that through some analytical engines they have on the website. And so we'll be able to furnish other people with these demographics of exactly how many people are coming to McMinnville, where they're eating, where they're staying, how they're staying it. Bend, for instance, if you look at things like TripAdvisor, Visit Oregon, all these other, Expedia, all these other search sites, Visit Bend, their own internal website was the number one references for reservations in the city of Bend. And they had, last year they had over, I think it was 14,000 inquiries. So we hope that that thing's going to happen in McMinnville.
All right. Well, that's your under golden objectives. That one is going very well.
It's going very, very well.
Let's talk about another one. Let's get back to the airport. Airport development. It has here, secure a single service provider for fixed-based operations. Would you translate that for us?
Yeah, fixed-base operations is basically, there's two ways fixed-base operations could run. You can normally have a city or the owner of the airport run it, or you can hire somebody that specializes in running what they call the fixed-base operations of the airport. That's the sale of fuel, routine maintenance. They may run a terminal building. They may do the maintenance like light replacement and everything. Well, our existing fixed-base operator has been here well over 20 years. Well, they've decided for retirement and health reasons that they're going to get out of the fixed-base operation. So we put out RFPs about 3 months ago for a new fixed-base operator to come into McMinnville and take over those anything that has to do with operations. And we have had two very, very good proposals, and I think it's next week, I can't say for sure, but next week that we open the proposals to see who got the fixed base contract award. And we're hoping by bringing in a more professional organization, there definitely wasn't anything wrong with the one we had, but what we're trying to do is step up our airport to the next step where it's really recognized as a gateway to the city and not just kind of a small general aviation airport out there.
So you have some good proposals. You feel like you?
Yeah, I think we have a couple very, very good proposals.
All right. Well, that is exciting. Combined with the tourism increase, that's gonna be great. Okay, let's go down to another one. Economic development's a big subject.
Wow.
It says look at economic development issues and opportunities. Just pick three. Yeah.
I'll pick three. I think one of the biggest things that are opportunities were the people of the city of McMinnville were very smart about 4 years ago to put a local match into the Dundee-Newburgh bypass. You know, Dundee and Newburgh, the local match they put in was really to help their livability issues, to take all the traffic or a lot of the traffic off of 99W in Dundee and Newburgh, especially in the area of truck traffic and freight traffic. Of course, McMinnville, we invested in it because we had a whole different perspective. It wasn't to affect our livability because we have excellent livability now. It was to affect our economic development because there's a lot of companies who would like to relocate to McMinnville, like to expand in McMinnville, companies who might want to put a new plant in McMinnville, but they always look at that transportation corridor and how long it takes to get from point A to point B. And point B in this case is I-5. And McMinnville has always kind of fell out that magic period that moving freight fast is what it's all about, product fast. We fell out of it, so we've been really penalized for our good livability because we've been outside of this range. So participating in the Dundee bypass is, I think, one thing that will affect our economics.
I remember Kent Taylor in one of his farewell speeches said, "My biggest nightmare is that I wake up and Cascade Steel is moving."
Oh, that would...
Because they can't get their product to I-5.
Right, and I don't think people realize that Cascade Steel, it's not just their employment force, but Cascade Steel definitely plays a major impact on what our citizens, our private citizens, pay for electrical rates, because Cascade uses more, or as much, if not more, electricity than the whole city of McMinnville put together. And being that we're on a different contracts with Bonneville Power, it's kind of strange. It's almost like the less you use, the more you pay. As supply and demand. So if it wasn't for Cascade Steel, we would say everybody's electrical rates here in McMinnville go up. And McMinnville right now has the cheapest electrical rates in the state. But you would see them increasing. So there's several reasons why, from the jobs, from the manufacturing, from the electrical usage, we don't want to see Cascade. It would have a dramatic negative impact on the city of McMinnville.
So the bypass is going to help them stay right where they are with where we want them. All right, another economic development.
I think another economic development that was extremely important was several years ago, when McMinnville formed McMinnville Economic Development Partnership. There used to be several organizations in McMinnville that did economic development. There was the Chamber of Commerce, of course, which is pretty traditional. McMinnville Industrial Promotions, which is an organization that owns the majority of the land out in our industrial park. there was the city of McMinnville, and there was the downtown association. So there were a lot of different, well, we all got together and decided this isn't really a good way to do it, because we lost Hewlett Packard, and we almost also lost Mission Foods, who's located on Orchard Avenue, who makes tortillas, nacho chips, and everything. That would be a big impact. So we all got together and we decided, let's form one organization again, where it's all brought together, and we will hire an executive director, who in this case is Jody Christensen, who's probably one of the best economic development people in the state, to concentrate just on business retention, number one, and business attraction, number two. So that was very important.
We almost lost Mission Foods. Let's back up there. Tell me that story. How did we?
Well, before we had a really consolidated effort, we didn't have anybody visiting these companies. Companies would decide, like Mission Foods just decided that it was cheaper for them, not based on all the facts, but it was cheaper for them to move to Sunnyvale, California, where they had an existing plant. Well, the city just got wind that they were going to move. Well, if we wouldn't have got that wind, they would have just up and moved. And that's when they were, before they were part of the Hublin Group, food group, and then before that, they were Diane's Foods, and Mission Foods, is the one we have in McMinnville, was actually founded as Diane's Foods in a small metal building over by Linfield College. So it was much like the third one I'll talk about, which is Betty Lou's. It was a homegrown business that really grew, that we almost lost because we weren't paying attention to our businesses and our manufacturers in McMinnville. And then the third one, of course, is Betty Lou's, who started in her garage, again over by Linfield College, and she makes the snack bars and everything, and grew and grew and grew. We almost lost her to Boulder, Colorado, because she was being really wooed by the state of Colorado and the city of Boulder. They said, come back here, we'll build you a new building, we will put a delay on your property taxes, we will do everything.
There's
incentives
competition
to move.
for successful companies.
Right. Well, Jody Christensen at that time just happened to find out that one of the Skyline manufactured home buildings in McMinnville on Booth Bend was for sale. Mm-hmm. Within just a few days, they were back in Indiana talking at the corporate headquarters, and Betty Lou bought that building. Of course, it's been enlarged about twice since then, and now she has a second plant in our industrial park. But if it wasn't for Jody and McMinnville Economic Development Partnership, Betty Lou's probably would have ended up in Colorado, and we would have lost it because we didn't know somebody else was courting her, somebody that she was looking at moving. So those are three very good examples. And you lose people like Betty Lou's, Cascade Steel, a lot of those manufacturers, and it'll have a very negative impact on the city.
All right, let's go down. Goals and objectives. We've got, let's talk about urban renewal.
Wow, urban renewal is something and that's one of my passions. We've always had a small historic downtown area and a small urban renewal area, but it was basically from 2nd Street to 5th Street and from Baker Street to the railroad tracks, and a little part of it along 3rd Street out towards the Chevrolet dealership. But we decided that we wanted to take a look. We formed a committee and look what really should be in an urban renewal area, what property. Well, with the state of Oregon land use planning, one of the things you can do is there's incentives to bring what they call blighted areas. By blighted, I'm talking about old streets, old road, lack of infrastructure, old buildings into an urban renewal area and then use it for redevelopment. So we enlarged our urban renewal area downtown, but we also included in our urban renewal area from 5th Street, where the Granary District is, all the way up to 13th Street, and from the railroad tracks east to Lafayette Avenue. Well, that will allow us then to put money into that, and through what they call tax increment financing, which means the county figures out the taxes. You have to have all your partners together, the school district, any taxing agency, and they look at what the taxes are today, and they freeze, whoever develops in there, the property owners in that area, they freeze the property taxes at that area for certain years. Then as the assessed value goes up, the additional tax money goes to the urban renewal area. And so it's used for jump-starting economic development, putting in infrastructure. Then after 20 years or 15 years, whatever the urban renewal area is good for, the theory is then the urban renewal area comes to a stop, and the increased value, all like the school district, they start getting all of that money back from the increased value of what the property is worth now. So if the property in value quadruples, you maybe lose a little bit along the way, but after that 20 or 15-year period, however long the urban renewal agency is good for, all of a sudden you get a big spike. You might get a 30, 35, 40, 50% increase in your taxes because of the value of the urban renewal area.
Tax increment development.
Tax increment financing is called TIF, and basically that's what I said is where they take all the valuations of any property inside this urban growth area. They freeze the property taxes so the owner doesn't pay any more. They continue to pay their property taxes, but the value doesn't go to like the school district or the city of McMinnville or Yamhill County. It goes to the urban renewal area.
So that becomes funds to
That
develop
becomes
that
funds
area.
to do some.
And that's happening now to our Alpine district?
Yes, to our Alpine district.
That's happening now. Those monies are
Yes, that
flowing
money
that
goes
direction.
to that. Then also we formed, as you know, the transportation bond, which was a $24.7 million bond to improve streets and everything in McMinnville. Part of that is going to the Lafayette Avenue, the Alpine Avenue. So by next spring, there was a meeting last night, and I know you were there, that showed what the initial plans are for the Festival Street. So by next spring, we will actually be replacing Alpine Street from 7th Street to 10th Street, the first 3 blocks, with new meandering streets, open areas to spur development to come in there. And then the thought is once that development's there, that whole area will infill with new development.
Yeah, I picked up a picture of what that's going to look like. No curbs on the streets. Sidewalk to sidewalk, flat, pedestrian friendly.
Pedestrian friendly, and what they do is to keep the street, and the one we're leaning to is actually, it's kind of a meandering street, and the way they mark the pedestrian areas away from the traffic areas is with the use of balustrades, the tall concrete poles. Some of them are lighted, they're decorative, so the cars can't accidentally drive onto the sideway park. But it's really one flat surfaces. The street itself may be brick pavers, the sidewalks may be concrete, but different textures, and there may be a few little speed bumps to calm the traffic as it drives through. And it's a very narrow street, so it's not meant to be a raceway. Very narrow street, but it's all on one level. So whether you're handicapped or you have children or whatever, you don't have to go to an intersection to cross the street. You just cross the street. So.
Another thing I saw there had a picture of the power poles, which are pretty prominent.
Right.
They're coming down.
Yes, matter of fact, our city, and this takes a lot of planning, because being that the city of McMinnville, we actually, through our Water and Light Commission, the citizens of the city of McMinnville by charter, we own our own public utility district. So we own city water and light. So through their capital outlay and their capital projects, City Water and Light has set money aside to actually bury the electrical and bury the water. And then the city, who's responsible for sewer, will bury the sewer. But the nice thing, since it's all being redone at the same time, it'll all be buried at the same time in trenches. So that whole area will not have any overhead power lines, won't have, everything will be underground.
So this seems to be a case of if you build it, they will come, in that what's built is this beautiful street with infrastructure underneath it waiting for development.
Yes, and in every place they've done that, that's exactly what happened. You could take downtown, not too far south, downtown Independence. They did in Independence has the most beautiful area along the river now, and downtown Independence was pretty blighted. You could take the old mill district in the city of Bend where the old lumber mills were. Beautiful area now, because good development like that spurns more development. And after we get done through the first 3 blocks, we'll start the second 3 blocks, which is going to be called an art district, which it's more for artisans and everything.
Crafts.
Till probably in, I'd say, 10 to 15 years, Alpine will look totally the same from 7th Street, the Granary District, all the way down to 13th or 14th Street. It'll all look the same. It'll look like our downtown area.
Now, oftentimes we hear, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. This project from 7th to 10th is going to be, the ground will be broken next year. It's
Yes,
happening.
matter of fact, actually, we're going to start construction in April. This is something that, through the transportation bond, the tax increment financing, the urban renewal district, everything, it's paid for. I mean, it's not
It's going to
raising
happen.
money.
This isn't something we'd like to do. We're
Yeah,
doing it.
it's doing. It's like the city. Well, one reason that our water rates are so cheap in McMinnville is our City Water and Light Commission through the City Water and Light Commission. 3 years ago, we doubled the capacity of our water treatment plant up at Haskins Creek, which is west of Carlton. That was paid for by cash, no floating bonds. We had saved over a period of time till we had the cash, and then we built it. So there was no bonded indebtedness. And that's one thing that I think sets McMinnville separate. Very, very seldom for a lot of these do we float big bonds. Now, the transportation bond, we had to float a bond because the way the city is sharing in gas tax revenue now, or the state, you hear on news all the time how everybody's infrastructure is crumbling. Our infrastructure is crumbling. So the local people decided it was well worth putting in that $24 million to improve our infrastructure, our roads and our streets and our sidewalks. And a lot of work's going on this year already.
Wow, that's delightful. I'm just excited to see it, and it's going to happen soon.
Yeah.
We were talking before the show. I'd like you to tell us the story about how this studio came to be, MCM, how the city pulled that off.
I was original. McMinnville had a franchise with Liberty Cablevision, who then became TCI Cablevision, who then became Comcast Cablevision. Back, there was a push by several individuals. I think one of the biggest ones was Ruben Contreras. There was Frank Nelson, who used to have a program on here, Speaking Frankly, that decided we needed a good public access television. Ours was terrible. It was downtown. So we signed a franchise. The city council at that time determined that any money that came in through our franchise fees, what a cable provider, both Frontier and, at this case, Comcast pays, was going to go directly to the community access television. And so the regular franchise fee comes. But also, we are the only city that had ever sued TCI Cable for what we call past sins money, for not living up to their franchise agreement. And we got almost $1 million from them, which actually started this studio and made sure, and it was all transferred again to MCM, who formed their own board of directors, so the city stayed out of it, which made the purchase of this building possible, the initial upgrade of all the equipment possible, and from there, it's just taken off. And we have, known as having one of the best for a town this size. Our public access studios, where we sit now, and the editing room, the equipment we use, the portable van and everything, is known as being one of the best. And it was because the city council had the nerve to sue Liberty Cable for that back sins money. Newburgh does not have public access television because they elected their franchise fee was all going to go into the general operating fund of the city, fund police, fire, and everything. Our city council elected, since it was a franchise fee, met for public access, that all of the money we collected was going right back to public access. And so it's not part of our general operating fund, so we don't see it, we don't miss it.
Wow, so, that's a great story. I'm humbled by that, just to be here in this beautiful studio, Frank Nelson studio.
Yeah, but that's what the citizens of McMinnville, that's what they do, very forward thinking. So,
well, forward thinking. Let's take this last minute and just talk about vision. Vision for the next 20 years. What's on the table? What are the concerns? What are probably our opportunities here?
I think my biggest concern and our council's biggest concern is the funding of our ambulance service. This year, our ambulance service through the fire department will run at about a $1.5 million deficit. That means the taxpayers are funded to additional $1.5 million. As McMinnville is very, very well known for retirement. Well, that's good because we get a lot of good retired people in McMinnville. Hillside, Manor, Park View, they're all, but those are the people that most people that are on Medicare. So what happens is the call volume goes up, the payment for Medicare goes down, so that gap grows. I think the federal government or somebody's going to have to address that gap, and we've looked at different ways of addressing that gap because we can't continue. Next year, I think it's estimated will be almost a $2 million deficit in ambulance service. How do you address it? So a challenge. That's the biggest challenge. PERS we won't get into because that's the state can't even figure PERS out. That's going to be a big challenge. But I think for me as mayor, my biggest thing is that if we can, if when I'm done with my mayor, whether it be next year and I don't run, or 4 years from now, or 8 years from now, is McMinnville should be bigger, but our quality of life should be exactly the same. It should not change. We should continue doing everything the way we do it now to make it better for our citizens.
Thank you very much.
You got it.
That was wonderful. Thanks for being here.
And anytime, I'll be glad to come back and talk about some of the other issues.
We've got
too.
a lot more to talk about.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'm certainly glad I was here today to talk to the mayor, and I hope you were glad to hear what he had to say. I know a lot more about McMinnville, and it's great to be here. Join us again on Local Matters.